It's 2012, and Melanie Perkins, a 19-year-old Australian college student, is trying to raise money for her startup, a design platform. She has been rejected by over 100 VCs, is in Silicon Valley with no experience, no connections, and doesn't have a business degree. But here's one thing that changed everything for her. She stopped trying to sell her product and started selling the transformation it provided. So people can go from, I'm not creative, to now look at what I made. This tool was Canva, and it is now worth over $25 billion. Hey, I'm Chris Greenwald, entrepreneur, startup coach, attorney, and FANG product manager. Today, we're diving into startup sales, but not the kind that they would teach you in some sleazy corporate training. I'm going to show you why traditional sales techniques often fail for startups and what founders who do succeed do completely differently. By the end of this video, you'll understand why the best startup sales don't feel like sales at all, and you'll be selling like a founder, not a sleazy salesperson. Okay, before we dive into sales, we have to look at your offer. This is our method number one for today. Before we talk about how to sell, we need to talk about what you're selling. You cannot sell something that isn't worth buying. Your offer is not your product, it is the transformation that you provide. So a bad offer would be something like, we're a project management tool with advanced features. What a good offer could look like is, we guarantee your team will ship products 30% faster in the first month, or will work for free until you do. That is a completely different story. Okay, the value equation that's going to help you write that story. You want to start with a dream outcome and then multiply it by the likelihood of that happening. Take all of that and divide it by the time plus the effort involved in getting it there. And that is where you end up with the value. Most founders will focus on features, but customers care just as much about getting it fast and how much effort it takes for it to get there. They do not want to wait for results and work really, really hard. If you can differentiate yourself there, you'll have a much easier sell. All right, method number two, the closer framework. This is a framework that breaks down the entire sales conversation into 6 steps, and I've adapted it specifically for startup founders. So we're going to go through all 6 in the closer method. C, number 1, is for clarify their situation. This is so important. You do not want to start just spewing out your pitch as soon as you get someone to listen to you. You want to start with their problems. So a question you might ask is, what's your biggest challenge with whatever industry you're in, whatever relevant area is there? And then let them talk for 70% of the conversation. Next up is L, label their problems. I want you to repeat back what you've heard. Something like, so if I understand you correctly, you're spending over 10 hours a week on manual data entry, and this is preventing you from focusing on strategy for your business. Is that right? Something like that makes them feel heard and like you understand the issues that they're going through. They'll be much more likely to continue that conversation with you. 3 is O, overview. Overview their emotional costs. This is where most founders just completely skip this. They don't want to bring emotion into the conversation, but it is what drives us to do everything that we do. So asking a question like, how does that feel? What is it costing you beyond just your time? This will help them feel the pain that they're going through, and then your solution will look so much more appealing after that. All right, number 4, sell the transformation. Now you present your solution, but if you follow this channel, you know we are still not selling features. We are selling the after state, the transformation. So saying something like, imagine if those 10 hours went back to strategy. What would this mean for your business? Now you're helping sell your product for you. All right, E, explain away their concerns. This one sounds a little sleazy, but after about 10 to 100 of these sales conversations, you're going to start to see common objection, things like budget concerns, timing issues, and just overall skepticism. You need to address these before your prospects voice them. So something like, I know you're thinking this sounds ambitious, but here's why I think it will really work for your business. Something along those lines. If you keep hearing that you don't think it'll work for me type of thing, that can really help assuage some of those worries. And then last one are reinforce their decision. So you want to confirm that they're making the right choice. So you can say something like, based on what you've told me, this addresses exactly what you need. How does this sound? So that takes you from step 1 to step 6. You are now through the conversation. And during any of these sales calls, I want you to focus on 3 different things. You want to ask questions, give restatements, and tell relevant success stories. Those are the only 3 things you can do during this call. If it doesn't fall into one of those 3 buckets, ask questions, give restatements, and tell relevant success stories, then you aren't saying it. This keeps the conversation focused and relatable to your product, your sale, and your customer. All right, last method here, method number 3. Here's what I use with my clients. So in phase 1, we have our perfect offer. So in weeks 1 to 2, before we sell anything, we craft an irresistible offer. What's the dream outcome? How likely are they to achieve it? How fast can they get results? And how much effort does it require? That is our original equation from our offer section. You want to test this with 10 potential customers. And if 7 out of 10 really don't see the value, then you need to look at your offer. These people should be within your niche as well. Of course, someone who is maybe a chef or something wouldn't want this particular marketing software for tech giants. You want to be able to look within your niche. But if someone's in there and it applies to them and they don't think that this sounds interesting, then you might want to continue to renegotiate that offer. Okay, phase 2, build your discovery system. So in weeks 3 to 4, you want to create your question bank. This is really helpful, especially for people that aren't used to selling. They have something to fall back on. You want to have some situation questions, something like, what is your current process for? Maybe a problem question. What challenges are you currently being faced with? Impact questions. What happens if this doesn't get solved? And then maybe some solution questions. How would it feel if this was solved? Things like this will make it so much easier when you're getting into those conversations and getting a little nervous. Phase 3, we want to collect success stories. So in weeks 5 to 6, we want to gather about 5 to 7 customer stories that address common objections. So something like a skeptic that later became a champion of the product, a competitor who switched over, maybe a small company that got really big results, or maybe something urgent that came up within a company's profile that you were able to solve really quickly for them. Once you have all of this information, we are now ready to start having those conversations. And in the last phase, phase 4, I want you to document all of the objection responses that you are getting. Track every one from too expensive. If something's too expensive, then we want to shift to the value and the ROI that we're providing. We ship products 30% faster. What is the cost of giving up a 30% head start in your market to your competitor? Or what is it like paying your team maybe an extra 3 months this year? When you're able to really narrow in on those objections, you're able to get really great feedback back to that customer. If they say maybe not the right time, explore the costs of what waiting would look like. What if you don't get to focus on your strategy for another year? What will that mean for your business? Something like, we're already using X to solve this problem. I want you to differentiate, not compete. I don't want you telling all the features that you have that they don't. I want you to differentiate your product from what they're currently using. And then if they say, I need to think more about it, this is usually the one where you have to uncover the real concern. We don't have time to get into that one too much in this video, but just know you're going to have to ask some more questions and keep going. If you guys want some more videos on this going a little bit deeper, let me know in the comments below. I'm trying to keep it as tight here as I can. Okay, lastly here, when to hire your first salesperson. Once you start doing all these calls and hopefully they continue to come in, you're going to notice that you don't have a lot of time for anything else. So here's when you know it's time to hire your first salesperson. You have personally closed 10 plus deals, and you can predict which leads will close based on certain characteristics about them. And then you also have a repeatable process that works. Maybe you've really implemented that closer framework, and each time you use it in a call, you have a higher likelihood of closing that client. So now that you have all that information, you document everything, and then you should be able to hire someone. You want to have those discovery questions, your objection responses, your closing techniques, follow-up processes with all of those leads. You want to have everything ready for that next salesperson. I want you also to remember that you already have salespeople working for you 24/7 on your website, your content, and your reputation. Once you validate your offer, invest in some of these assets. They're often your most cost-effective sales team. Okay, last thing here, when I was getting my MBA, one of my sales courses had us watch Glenn Ross. It's a famous movie on sales. And one of the takeaways that they always want you to have is the ABCs of selling. Always be closing. So if you have had any of these traditional type of sales techniques ingrained in you, I want you to put a couple of them out the window, especially this one. This is not exactly what you want to do in startup sales. Instead of always be closing, I like to think of always be learning. Each conversation should teach you something about your market, your product, or your messaging. And here's the difference: that traditional sales technique will force the close, but in startup sales, you really need to earn the close by having a great product, a great offer. So here's your homework: take the closer framework and practice with 3 potential customers this week. I want you to focus on listening more than talking. And what is the biggest objection you're hearing from your potential customers? I want you to drop it in the comments below. I read every single one, and I'll be able to respond back with some specific strategies to overcome those. And if this changed how you think about startup sales, please hit the like button. It helps other founders get this content. Remember, in startup sales, your biggest competitor is not another company, it is the status quo. Your job is to make doing nothing more painful than trying something new. I'll catch you in the next one.